everybody, welcome back to my channel. Sorry for the mess. It was either film this video or clean the studio, and I chose to film the video for you guys, so hang in there with me. This is still a work in progress back here, and I'm kind of trying to hide some of it. But anyways, last video we had the Inkscape tutorial showing you how to put together the images for if you wish to sublimate on fabric and to make your own piece of fabric to create items to sew so you cut your patterns out of them and stuff. What we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how I take that print that we created on Inkscape and turn those into bummies that I sew together. And then I also make a matching shirt, and I make the shirt from scratch. So if you guys want to sew along with me to do both of those, that's great. I'm using the patterns that we've used before. So the Bummies video that I previously posted, same pattern. The t-shirt video that I previously posted, same pattern. I'll link one or both of those at the end of this video for you guys in case you want to go back and watch those. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. I already have the pieces cut out here, and this is my front for my shirt. This is my back, and then I also have the neck and the sleeves. Again, this is the tutorial that I did a while back on the channel. I'll link it at the end of the video, like I said earlier. So this is in size 9 to 12 month, and the print that we're going to do today is this cute little print from Creative Fabrica. And if you guys don't know about Creative Fabrica, go check it out. They have a yearly subscription that keeps going down. I think it's $47 a year now. It used to be $20 a month, and it's amazing. So we have this cute little rocket with the astronaut and then the t-shirt to match. So I have either this print or this print, and I'll do both, but we're just gonna pick one for today. So when I do market, a lot of times these Creative Fabrica images that I get have several different designs on them, and they're all super cute and they all go together. So I'll pick one or two for the print and then a couple for the shirt. And a lot of times people will pick up like 2 shirts and 1 bummy because the 2 shirts match. So it's a real good way to get multiple sales without even realizing you're trying to get multiple sales. I'm making a bunch of them just because I think they're all cute and I want to see how they come out. And then as they start coming out, then I keep making more because I fall in love with them. But anyways, Creative Fabrica allows you to sell your designs so long as you have the subscription to them active. The minute your subscription cancels, you no longer have those rights. So just be aware of that. And at $47 a year right now, you can afford to do it. That's less than $4 a month. It's crazy, crazy the sale that they've got going right now. So anyway, just extra rolling this front here. As you know, you can never roll them enough, and no matter how many times I roll them, I still get a little teeny piece of something. And I mean, sometimes it's just a fleck. And for the most part, I don't worry about it. It's like the people are seeing it as they buy it. It's not like it's getting sent to them like if you were doing an online sale. So I figured if they see the fleck, then okay. And some people do see it and they're like, it doesn't really matter, my kid's gonna get it dirty anyway. So they don't care. And I've only had one person ask for a discount, and it was like 10%, and I was like, okay, whatever. You know, she bought a couple of things. So I you know, you just kind of feel it out with each person. But for the most part, I do my best, and it is what it is. So we're gonna choose one of these, and if you guys haven't been watching Angela Jasmina's videos, you need to go over and watch. but she has this ruler that she bought on Amazon, and I didn't even think about it. It's for paper crafting, but it's perfect for ripping your designs here to have an uneven edge so that there is no edge burn on here, because when you have a straight edge, a lot of times you'll get an edge burn and it'll just create almost like a line on the fabric, and it creates a color for me. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but I do. So I am going to do this, and I just use the wavy edge one right here. I don't use this side, and I just got this on Amazon. I think I got like a pack of 3 for 12, 15 bucks or whatever. There's a whole bunch of them to choose from. You can get just one, you know, whatever you want. So I think I'm gonna do this one. Let me see. It's too big. When I print these out, sometimes it's bigger than I think it's going to be. I didn't realize this one was gonna be quite as big, which will be fine because I do bigger sizes. So I'll be able to use this for a bigger size. This is 9 to 12 months. So the 18 to 24 month, this will fit perfectly. But it's a little bit too big, I think, for the 9 to 12. So anyway, we will use this other one for today. Man, hard waking up today, guys, when it's gray like this outside, but it's really nice. And yes, this is being filmed the same day, even though my shirt is different. It's hard to dress on these days. It was chilly-ish this morning. Enough that hoodie that I had on, if you want to call it a hoodie, was feeling good. But the minute I get down in the studio, it got a little warmish. So I went upstairs and changed real quick. So I was like, it's going to be a long work day if I'm out warm. So yes, same day, guys. And shout out to PJ Mommy and Color Street on my nail color. I love it, I love it. I hope you guys love it too. This is Teal We Meet again. I'm not sure if that color is still available or not, but Color Street is where it's at, guys. You know, I've worn gel, I've worn everything, and these last as long as gel do. It's crazy, just crazy. But they have the prettiest colors, and I'm hard on my nails, guys. Very hard on my nails. And these will last me 2 weeks. Now, I do put a clear coat on top. I have a clear coat that's a little bit of a strengthening coat, which I don't need because my nails are super, super strong. But I do it more just for the longevity. So it's supposed to like help your nails be super strong and make your manicure last. Well, that I kid you not, it helps, except for like right now when I just scrape my nail. So you'll see one little chip, but that was my own fault. That was not Color Street's fault. It was the ruler, guys. I got a little crazy. This ruler it's awesome, but it's super thin. So it does have, you're not gonna cut yourself, but you are gonna nick your nails. I'm just gonna warn you. It's one of those kind of sharpness. And then I just got a little close to the edge, so I can't get the ruler to do that part. There we go. All right, now the best part about a lot of these is I try and not put them straight unless I really like it, because sometimes straight is the hardest way and you're gonna get them off just a little bit. So I try and just kind of, especially when you flip them like this, I try and just offset them just a little bit so that you don't have to worry about, oh my goodness, is it straight? What if I get it wrong? And then you just kind of, I just want to put one little fold right there so I kind of know where the center is. And get it as close, you know, not like right here. You don't want it right here because you're going to go sew the band on. But it's probably about 1 inch down, and I've got print like right here, so it's gonna look really cute. If you didn't even still it was down here, say like it was this part was the first thing, it'd still look okay. So anyway, so there's my center, and let me put some tape on it. Now I don't put big amounts of tape on because you'll see when I pull this off, it does leave a tiny bit of a mark. Now it will come out, oops, and then I just put a hair on there. Pull that one off. I swear, when you're trying to be super careful, everything works against you. Oh man, that's funny. It's like, no hairs. I'm trying to not put hairs on here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and one more time just around this, because that's where I seem like I have it, and it must be after I touch it and put this down, I must transfer a little bit. Okay, so we've got that set, and that's the only thing that needs to be sublimated. Now I am going to put a size marker on this over at my heat press, and I'll take you guys over there with me. So let's go over to the heat press. Hey everybody, okay, so we're over at the heat press, and I have mine set at 400 degrees for 50 seconds. You will have to test your heat press and do several different prints to find out what temperature works best for you, and also the amount of seconds that you need. You're gonna get in the ballpark of this, but it really is gonna make a difference with each one. I was doing 60 seconds for the longest time, and I was having some problems every now and then with one print coming out beautiful, and then the next print would be just a touch lighter. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, I finally figured out I was leaving it in a little too long. For some reason, one would be okay, the next one would not. And the longer you leave something under a heat press, there's like a sweet spot where it stops printing, and then all of a sudden it starts sucking the color back out. So just be aware, you've got to keep testing, and if something changes and it starts doing that to you where one's okay and then the next print is super light, that's probably your problem. It's either your temperature or the amount of time that you are heat pressing for. So anyway, just a little tidbit there that I just figured out not too long ago. So I have my back here, and I'm gonna put real quick my size tag on it, which is just one of those vinyl tags that you can print on through your regular printer. So let me do that real fast. And I just use a corner here, and I do cover it, and I do pull it down just a little bit. And I don't really push this down. I just hold it down just real lightly, just to kind of put a little bit of pressure on it. It really doesn't need much. If you were using an iron, about the amount of pressure you would use to put on an iron, and it doesn't take long, 5 seconds or so. And so then there's my tag. Let me see. There we go. All right, so that's the back. Now, the front, I walked away and did not bring it over with me. I'm always so paranoid that I'm going to get stuff on it. In fact, I'm going to go ahead one more time while I'm walked away and re-roll it again. Feel like no matter what I do, it just falls out of the sky and lands on my back, on my piece of fabric. And the only part it matters on is this t-shirt. When you start doing the bummies, the fabric is coated in color, and so it doesn't really show. So I try and not do the whole front. I do as much as I have to get it underneath. Looks like I got, yeah, I got a piece of lint right there. Amazing how these bright lights, I can start seeing stuff that I couldn't see over there. There too. Okay, I'm just gonna leave that one off. It seems like sometimes the heat, once you get it on here, helps to straighten that print out for me. Now you see how my edge wants to curl? I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's trying to curl here from the heat. So as I take my parchment paper, and if I just slide it, it just rolls it flat for me. There we go. Okay. So there's that. Now, I also have the bunnies all cut out, and they are right here. So I have the pieces already cut out, and we will sublimate each piece. So this is where, when we were doing that Inkscape tutorial and I was showing you how to put the pattern together, now this is how it prints out. So this is an 8.5 by 13 piece of paper. I do that because the bummies, the backs and the fronts need just that little extra. You see how it's got have that little extra going on? And that kind of seems to be about the biggest my printer will print. It might go to 14, but it kind of doesn't like to do it. So I've tried to do, you know, by 15, by 17, trying to push it a little bit. It didn't seem to want to do it. So I stopped at 13. Okay, so here's my shirt. And this is where it gets really hard on your nails. Just telling you, if you paint your nails, this is where I screw up my nails. The heat just messes my nails up so fierce. So here is the print. And it's kind of hard to see. And I'm doing it like this because of the light. But we'll look at it again after I've sent it together. I'll show you guys a better view of it. But I'll show you too, kind of, it does tend to imprint the image, this part. So you see how I made it uneven? Well, it still does that on the fabric. It'll wash out. It's not a big deal. It's just, you know how it is when you iron a wrinkle into something. It's not there permanently. That's kind of what it does, but it's better than the straight edge, because the straight edge, I've had times where it turned it a color onto the fabric. Why, I don't know, but it did. Okay, so here is the bummy back. See how it fits on the paper? And we're just gonna sublimate that. So it goes on there. You put your paper on. Set your timer. Do the same for the front. This one I don't worry about so much. I just give it a real quick, just because it's on the inside. It's not really going to show even if it does happen. Again, on the inside, nobody's really going to notice it. But they fit beautifully on this piece. I can get up to an 18 by 24 on these sheets. Now the 18 to 24 size, I don't have it 100% covered in sublimation. I make sure the parts that don't fit, I can catch within my seam, and so it doesn't show. But anything above that, I've tried a 2 to 3, it was rough. It was really rough. It was pushing it too much. So, and it's more so much the width of the fabric, and my printer doesn't print anything wider than 8.5, so I can't even make that better. And I've tried taping sheets together. I know somebody's gonna say that. Still shows. I'm too much of a perfectionist. It shows. You can see a little bit. There's times when I get away with it, but for the most part, I'm not a fan. Okay, so you ready? Here it is. Now, that one's done. I'm gonna put the size on it real fast while I'm here. Best to do it right away so that you don't forget what size you're doing. Because if you start doing these for market or anything, and you'll notice it's just hot enough, I'm able to kind of somewhat get them to stick right away if I push down, because the heat will make them kind of sort of stick, not permanently. You gotta still put the top on it, but at least it won't go flying around. But if you're doing these for market and you're doing a whole bunch of sizes, you definitely want to figure out how to keep from messing yourself up. So I will do one size at a time. Again, I'll show you guys. One size at a time. And then I put all the pieces together and roll it into a burrito, and I'll show you how that looks too. And then I put it away into my pre-marked, remember the little baskets I showed you that I was using? So then I'll roll them up and put them in here, and then I take them over to sew. But we're not going to do that today. That's if I'm doing production. So today I'm just going to show you one. Here's the front. And those of you that are like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. How do you do that? You can't afford that. It's not that expensive. I have, between my fabric and I use 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 to 5 sheets of this per bummy. And just the sublimation alone is only like $1 or $2. And then I get my fabric on bulk price. So it's like 1/3 the retail price. And I sell these for $11 a piece at market, and I make money. So it's not that expensive. You just have to make sure you get your pricing down. Make sure you know where you're at before you price your items, and be cognizant of how you're going to sell, who you're selling to, how that's going to look like in your mind. Because I walked into market, again, there's another video where I talk about market and how I decided my price points and what I'm doing, and it's still working. It's working very well. I get so many compliments from people about how my pricing is really, really good, and it shows in my sales. So let's see. So there's that. I know this light over my head is really burning this out. We'll be able to see this a little better here in a moment, guys. Sorry. I put these really high beam lights so I can see. And they're really, really, really bright, and they're perfect for when I'm working in here, but they're not so good for videoing. I'm so sorry. All right. Now, I do sometimes use the 8.5 by 11 sheets for this part, but for the most part, for speed, I don't. And what I do, though, and just so that you guys know and can kind of think about doing this yourself, I don't just kind of burn off this part right here. I cut it off. And what do you do with these little bits and bobs, you ask? Well, you got little bits and bobs of the fabric that you're sublimating here, little bits and bobs of this, sublimate that, and use that for your applique for your embroidery. So you have pieces of fabric. Also, you don't always have to go shopping. And if you get the right knit fabric that sublimates really well, the colors are so intense that you're gonna probably not really go shopping that often for fabric, because you're gonna always want to do this, and you're always gonna have pieces of this to use. So it kind of makes sense to keep using your scraps. There's other things you guys can use it for too, if you're making other things like you know, smaller items. So yeah, just don't throw stuff away. Don't heat press the rest of your piece of paper if you've got a piece that's kind of extra. Now, if I'm in a huge hurry for the market, sometimes at the last minute, some of my pieces just go down and that's it. We just do it. But I try and not do that. All right, so let me show you this too. So you see how the paper prints out, and I use Cosmos ink, everybody, until you go and look at my other video. I tell you that there too. See how it prints out blue from the printer, but it sublimates gray. So just another tip for you guys, that sometimes what you see on your paper is not how it comes out. Now, on this smaller one, if I thought about it, some of these, this is the waistband, And I had to cut it in half because my pattern has it as one big piece, but I can't sublimate the whole piece because the piece of paper is too short. So I cut them in half, and I account for that in the sewing as well. So I cut just a little bit extra when I cut them. Now sometimes if I printed this the right way and turned my print, I could have done one more sheet like this, but I forgot to do that. And it's only the smaller ones that I can do that with. So on this one, I'm gonna have a few more, extra pieces of the paper because it does not fit still. I can't put two on. Even if I come and pull it up like this, it still won't fit. So I just stick it in the middle, cut it off, and I've actually got a fairly good size here that I may be able, I want to start doing a few of the teething rings with the fabric that, you know, you put on, looks like rabbit ears, also for the market. And this piece might actually work for one of those pieces of fabric. So we will see. Now, if I do this, nope, it's not gonna fit. Sometimes I can also get two of those on, sometimes not. Okay. Now, the thing about this too, when you're doing the leg bands and the waistband, you don't need to use a new piece of your parchment paper, because if it's the same fabric, like this is the one I did for the front and the back, it doesn't matter if it sublimates onto the back because it's on the inside and nobody can even see that. So I just reuse my papers for those. And I reuse those for a long time when I'm using the same print, when I'm doing a batch. So I'll only tear new ones for the front and back pieces. Last one. Seems like 50 seconds shouldn't be very long, but when you stand here and wait, man, I'm like, okay, I got a bunch of stuff I could be doing. A lot of times I'll run back and forth and sew while I'm sublimating and waiting, and because I'm just right there and I can hear it go off. But with you guys, I don't want to be doing that to you. So that's a lot of my production, but I will sometime soon just do a work with me without me talking and show you just with music in the background, obviously. Just show me running around doing this, how I, go back and forth to see my production so that you guys can see what it looks like if those of you are trying to figure it out. And once you kind of start doing it, it'll start making sense. But if you've never done it before, I'm sure you're wondering, oh, how do you, what do you, where do I, those kinds of questions. So, only thing I fight with this, and it really doesn't matter which side I do, is sometimes, for those of you that are knitters will understand this. The fabric I use is knit and stockinette. And so it curls if I don't put it on the correct side. For those of you that don't knit, what that means is there's two stitches for stockinette. There's a knit stitch and a purl stitch. So you knit across on the front and you purl across on the back. So the knit on the front creates a purl on the back, and when you purl across on the back, it creates a knit stitch on the front. Well, when you do that, the type of stitch that is just causes it to want to curl on the bottom. And so that's how this was produced on the knitting machine when they did this fabric. And so the first time I got that and it curled really bad, I was like, oh no, my favorite fabric is knit and stockinette, no! I'm gonna be fighting this all the time. So anyway, I just don't fight it, I flip it over. It doesn't really show It's such a fine stitch. You can't tell. I've tried, I've looked really close, and I can't even sometimes see the purl versus the knit. And it's kind of just brushed enough on both sides too that it hides the stitch definition. So I can't see it very well. So that's the only way I really kind of know is I watch it curl. Ooh, hot. Okay. There we go. Now, little tip, and it doesn't matter so much on this color, but if you get on lighter fabrics, or you're doing something that does not have a color to the background and it's just the color of the fabric with the prints on it, when you pull up your heat press, and mine's a swing away, so maybe yours is just a clamshell where it goes up, let the steam completely go away before you move it. I've had shadowing happen and had to reprint the piece. Never even thought that was going to happen, and I didn't even hardly move it. I was so careful, and the minute I pulled it up, I was super fast at pulling the fabric off. It's still shadowed. So I've realized by letting the steam completely dissipate before I move anything really helps it. I still have it happen occasionally, but not as much. So just a little tip for you there. All right, now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these together. So I'll be back, meet you over there. Okay, so we're at the serger now, and do that a little bit sideways so maybe you guys can see a little better. Gotta have a little drink, sorry. I don't know who else is addicted to caramel lattes like me. I start making them at home. I love them so much, so you know, keeps me going. And I am having a really hard time waking up today, guys. This weather is just kicking my butt. And it's not so much that it's cold, but it's just gray and drizzly, and we need it so bad. So I'm enjoying the fact that we are getting some moisture. But wow, it makes it rough. Okay, so I'm gonna start sewing the pieces together. So I'm gonna do, I kind of do a little bit of chain sewing where you sew one piece after another without stopping. So this is the neckband. You have to sew it together on the short sides. Position wastebasket so it'll catch my pieces as it comes off the serger here. And I don't have it close enough to the edge. There we go. And there's that. All right, so then I also, this is your sleeve. So I will do the bottom edge. I'll serge the bottom edge. Very first thing I do before we start sewing everything together. And I have not cut off the other piece that I just put together there in the front. So we have two sleeves. Do that to both. Now I also have the top parts of the shirt. So we're going to do the shoulders. So I have the shoulder seams here. I'll be able to do both of those on chain sewing without cutting. So you just do the first one, let it sew through, and then feed the second one through as well. A little harder to do on the tiny sizes, but once you start getting up to, you know, 6 to 12 and on up, you should have a little easier time. You might be able to do it on the smaller sizes. I'm just saying if you're struggling, don't fight it. I'm just trying to line them up a little bit here. Now, I'm also going to start into my bummy without doing any cutting off. Now make sure If you do the bummy and you cut the waistband in half and it's got a directional print, make sure you pay attention when you go to sew them together that up is up and down is down on both pieces, and so you don't pull them apart and then, oh no, you gotta rip it out. And I've done that, so just saying. This one, I'm going to not be able to do the other side, just because I'd have to cut it off, so I'll get that one in a minute. Now we're gonna do the leg bands. Challenging Chloe, and she's such a smart one. She's figuring out how to get that ball out of the toy. And I mean, she literally walked up and went, whoop, and pulled it out and laid it on the floor and looked at me like, what else you got? Such a smart one. All right, and then I'm going to do the front to the back on one side, and then we will have to cut this apart because it's like the waistband. I will not be able to go further without cutting it. All right, so this is what they mean by chain sewing if nobody's ever seen it. Now I just go and snip them apart. As I proceed to drop everything. Even, let me cut the rest of these and then I will show you what the neckline did. Some of you are kind of not sure what I was talking about. Okay, so when I showed you to do the two shoulders together, see how I've got this little piece right here? So I will snip that, cut it in half. And there it is. They're sewn together. So, super fast. This is kind of a time to, I'm one of those OCD people that I like to have some of my edges cut, my threads trimmed. And I've learned over time that sometimes if I don't do that, now this may not be you, this is a me thing, sometimes it'll get caught. And then I end up having to stop and get it uncaught from either my sewing machine or something that got caught on that's causing problems. So that's just me with the longer pieces. I just may be the one that has that problem, you guys may not. Okay, so that was the side of the waistband. Now we'll finish the bummy. Do the other side. If you did not 100% cut everything perfectly, it straightens itself out when you sew it together. Just so long as you didn't really mess it up by a lot, then it won't affect the sizing. It's not going to be a problem. Okay, so now what do we go next? You can either do the bummies or you can do the shirt. I'm going to do the shirt, get that part done. So now that I've got the front and the back, and inside is the print. So we're gonna leave it inside out. I like to put the neck on first. You can put the sleeves on first if you prefer. I've just kind of gotten to a point where, for me, I get it to where everything kind of goes in a certain way and I just stay there because I can do it so much faster if I know that is the way I'm going to do it. I don't think about it. If I'm super tired, I can just sit and just production line. So I take and I use these little paper clips that you get in the office area. I know a lot of people have the other little sewing clips. Doesn't matter, you can use whatever you had. I had a bunch of these already, so I didn't want to go buy the others, and these work really well. I use these to sew my leather shoes, and they're super tight, as in they hold really well because they're tight. So for me, they work really, really well. I probably will never switch, but I've never tried the others, so I don't know the difference. Okay, now here's a little tip for those of you that go back and watch the t-shirt video that I did, and you want to do this same pattern. I've learned that the back of the neck's a little bit shorter than the front of the neck distance-wise, so when you go to put this in, because I've already got it clipped at the shoulder, folded in half and clipped, I figure out where the other side is, and then for me, it's about a finger width back-ish. You just gotta play with it. And that's how far back I need to go to put it to the other shoulder seam. And I start sewing here, so I only use one clip. That clip is holding to this side. Now, until you kind of get used to doing these, if you start wanting to do them for production, you're gonna fiddle a little bit, so use a bunch of clips until you get really used to it. I've done so many of these now that I only need the one clip. When I first started, I needed a lot. So don't feel like you're not gonna get there, because you will. It just took me a while. And by not, if you don't do the difference of the back being shorter, the front being longer, you're gonna end up with a ruffle along the neckline at that neck piece, because there is more fabric here than there is back here. So when you go to stretch the neckline to put it in, you're gonna stretch it way more on the front than you did on the back, and it's gonna look really weird. It's not gonna look like a t-shirt. And I still at times have to go back and either pull out parts of it and resew it, because I still didn't, you know, sometimes when you're tired, things just don't go well. So don't feel like, you know, you're not gonna get it, because you will. It just takes a little bit of practice. Once I get it started, it goes pretty well. Okay, so let me preface what I just told you guys. So when I took half to half and I took one finger back, that means I always start pinning at the left shoulder, and I'm coming across to the right shoulder. So my half and one finger back is for the back. And then I start sewing here and come around the front first and then go around the back. That way, if for some reason I feel like I'm pulling too much, I can still release a little bit from the shoulder on where I've got it pinned, even though, yeah, that's gonna take the, it's gonna take the seam forward, because I've got the seam. And you can do this however you want. You can put the seam on the other side. But I always start where I put the seam part with this shoulder seam and clip it and then go around. But again, that's my preference. You can go the other way and clip half and take the non-seam part. If you're having a problem and you are constantly having to release a little bit, then that's probably what you're going to want to do, is put the seam to the seam over here so you can release the non-seam part from the other side. So it will, once you play with it once or twice, it makes sense. And I just take my time going around. I'm constantly lining the fabric up with my hands while I'm doing it, and then I get to the end. When I get to the end, it's kind of wrinkled just a little bit where you started. So I will take the piece of thread that you started from, so you'll have a tail, and I just kind of pull that straight out 90 degrees from the way I'm sewing, and then pull my fabric this direction, so my fabric's going this way and my thread's going this way, and it really kind of lines everything up really nice. And since you're doing the serger, then you sew past it, it kind of cuts off that little bit of extra fabric that you've got and just straightens everything out really nicely. All right, so see how nice that came out? Just take my time with this piece, because this one, you don't want to rush the next. Take your time with those. It'll take you longer to go rip it out than if you took your time the first time. You know, that's just one of those, everybody knows that one. Okay, so this is the sleeve. See how the bottom rolls up right here? That's what I was telling you about. This is the knit stitch, this is the purl stitch on this fabric. Now, rolling up at the bottom. So as it rolls up, then that's my front. I know that's my front because that's the knit stitch, and you want the front to be the knit stitch. So I'm going to take this, I'm gonna fold it in half. Don't worry about the bottom, doesn't matter right now. And I've got, that's where the middle is on my sleeve. So I just kind of put my finger in there, my fingernail, so I know exactly where the middle is. And I've still got my t-shirt inside out. So I'm gonna put right side to right side at the seam. So where my fingernail is, which is the middle of the sleeve, goes on the seam at the shoulder. That's where I put my clip. See, here's your shoulder seam. Here's the middle of the top of the sleeve. Okay. Now, I'm going to, again, you will probably want to pin this if you've never done this before, and you're going to probably put a lot of pins in it. And actually, I use clips. I don't use pins because I'm serging. And I'm always afraid I'm going to run across the pin. Well, I've done these so many times, I don't even do that anymore. I just put the one in the middle to hold it. And I just take my time again. You just match up your edge. Match up your edge of your sleeve with the edge of either the front or the back of your shirt, whichever it is. So this is the edge. Here's your sleeve. Your shoulder seams up here. Okay. I always straighten everything out. Again, that's just me. That's how everything works best for me. You guys will get a little routine down once you start doing a lot of this over and over. And then I just take my time and line it up and sew the curves. Don't straighten your fabric out so that it's straight to sew. You want to sew your curves. If you straighten it out, then it's going to look really funny and it's going to look stretched and it's not going to have that nice curve to your shoulder. So you got to sew the curves, guys. That's why you got to take your time. So when I get to my clip at my shoulder, then I start straightening everything out so that it all lines up before I pull my clip. Get as close to the clip as I want. Pull my strings out of the way so they get cut. Go across that seam. Always make sure your needles are in your fabric when you stop, before you start moving anything. If they're not in the fabric, but they're sitting up above, turn your wheel so that they go down into the fabric, and that will help hold the fabric in place so that if you accidentally tug on something, it doesn't get the fabric out from underneath the needle. And that works as well for regular sewing. So that's just a standard sewing thing I always do. If you don't have a setting on your machine, for your sewing machine, that stops the needle in the down position no matter when you stop, then just make sure when you stop you get used to turning your wheel so that it brings the needle down. And it'll become second habit after you do it a few times, or after you accidentally move your fabric out of the way and you have to try and straighten it back out again. You're gonna remember. So here's my sleeve. And when I was talking about sewing the curve, you want to sew the curves here. You don't want to straighten them. You don't want to straighten them like this to sew them. You want to sew the curve. And it's really frustrating the first 2 million times you do it, because you're going to want to pull that fabric straight. Trust me, I wanted to myself until I figured it out. Just take your time. All right, do the same thing with the second sleeve. Fold it in half, find the center of the top of the curve that's going to be up here at the top of my shoulder. And do the other side. Right side to right side at the shoulder seam. Put that center of the top of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, so that you've got, there's your curve on the front, there's your curve on the back, and here's my sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to do this all over again. I'm going to tuck my sides. Stop and always make sure the edges of my fabric are together and that I'm not sewing across any kind of a fold underneath. You may do that a few times and have to go and pick a few stitches out for it to come out. You probably won't have to cut all the stitches out. You will have to cut probably a little ways before and a little ways after to be able to work it out. And then you just, I would re-sew the whole thing again rather than trying to start and stop, because if you try and start and stop with that little piece, it's going to drive you absolutely insane. And then you're also going to have to go and weave those two tails in. You don't want to do that. Just re-sew the whole thing again, even though you didn't rip it out, it doesn't matter. So that way you don't have to necessarily put your clip in unless you want to put it right there where you're sewing it back together again. And it'll just be so nice. It'll just come out really nice for you. Okay. I'm going to stop and talk, and then I forget where I'm at. Coming up to that shoulder seam at the top there. Make sure everything lines up right when I pull that clip off. It seems like that underneath piece of fabric always kind of wants to kind of pull away just a little bit. So take your time, get up under there, grab it and pull it up even before you start forward. And I'm just straightening everything, putting everything back where it's supposed to go, stretching what needs to be stretched. All right, so now we have the sleeves in, okay? So now we're gonna do the side seams. So I'm gonna start, and I always start at the sleeve edge, go to the armpit, and then down to the bottom of the shirt. I never start down here and go up. I want these to always match up. And if for some reason I'm going to have a little bit longer piece of fabric, I want it to be down here in my hem, not up here where the sleeve edges, like when your sleeve hits here, where your sleeve edge hits here. You don't want to have that surplus of fabric here. That's going to be really awkward, and it's not going to turn out finish-wise very well. It's going to look very, very silly. So I always start at the top, make sure everything works out here, and then if I have extra, I'm able to take it off down at the bottom, and it never shows. So go ahead, and if you need to, clip everything with your little clips. I usually like to make sure the seams that I want to match, I clip those until I get used to dealing with it. Now I just hold them with my finger. and they'll match up real nice. Everything lined up and sewed. Get them in there and make sure everything's lined up. Go ahead. And get all your strings out of the way. And down into the home stretch, match up the bottom of the seams down into the hem. And down the back. And then I always trim. I'll show you why. I always trim this tail so it's fairly short, because when I go to hem this, then I will tuck that tail in and turn my hem, and you'll never even have to go and take and thread it in there and lose it. The only one I'm gonna ever have to lose by threading a needle is at my neck. All right, so my next step I like to do, if you want, you can sew your other side together and then serge the bottom. For me, it's faster to leave one side open, serge the bottom because it's just one straight line. I'm not trying to work in a circle, and then I'll do the other side. But if it's easier for you to do the circle, then however, we'll end up at the same point together. Sew my other side seam. Just like I told you on the first one, I'm going to start at the sleeve edge where the hem to the sleeve is going to go. Put the armpit together and start at the top and sew down. And I'm stopping to line up the pieces that are going to fall right in here. Yeah, gone around that corner. Gonna put my two bottoms together for the hem. Pull my thread out of the way so that it gets cut when I sew across it. And down the edge. And this one also, I'm going to leave a short tail. I'm going to cut just a real short tail because I'm going to lose that in the hem. All right, so this is the inside of the shirt. We're almost done. The only thing we have left to do, and we'll do this in a minute, is we will go over to the sewing machine and we will hem those. Hem the bottom and hem the sleeves. And I use a stretch zigzag on that. I know some of you have cover stitch machines. You can use those as well. You can use the cover stitch on the neck band if you wish as well. I don't have one. I don't know that I ever will have one because it would force me to sew on the top, and I don't do well with that. I've got to be able to see 100% where I'm at when I'm hemming on this side. I need to be able to see this hem. Yeah, I know you can go and feel it and whatever. I know all the tricks. I've tried it. I end up with a mess. That is just the way it is for me. And then when this tries to roll on me just a little bit too, I want to make sure I can stop and straighten it out. And every time I get a really, really nice hem by doing that. So for me, I don't know that I will probably ever purchase a cover stitch. I've thought about it. And then I started realizing how I was going to have to use it. And I'm like, that's not how I sew. So I don't know that I see that in my future. All right, let's finish the bummies now. So we've got the front and the back already sewn together, okay? Now it doesn't matter whether you do the leg bands first or the waistband. I'm gonna do the waistband. It's just the way I do it. Fold it in half. I always put a clip on one side because I'm gonna go grab the other side where the two seams are together as well. So you're gonna have two seams, because if you're sublimating and you've got the smaller 8.5 by 11, 8.5 by 13 Epson 2720, which is what I use to print those sheets, and then you've got a smaller heat press. My heat press is 11 by 15, 12 by 15, something like that. So you'll have two side seams. No big deal. You just match them up with the side seams of the bummies. All right, so now you gotta make sure you put your fabric the right direction. So this is where my seam is going to be. So when we pull it up, because it goes on the inside of the bummy, when you pull it up, you wanna make sure, and that's not the right way. So I gotta make sure it's gotta go this way. So my little guy, my pattern, has to be down facing the inside of the bummy when I sew it, so that when I pull it out and it comes up, then he's right side up. So yeah, I've had to rip about 100 of those when I thought I had it right. And what I do, the first times I did it, and I still do this, I'll go and clip it in. So I'll clip it in this way, and I just do one side now. And I'll check through the leg. I'll just kind of pull it through because that pulls it out. And I'll check to make sure my fabric's the right way. And it is. It matches down below. So just always double check. And even when I've checked it, I've done it wrong. So don't get too frustrated, guys, until you've done these a few times. It's just the way it's gonna happen. And I found an easy way to rip serged edges. You just cut, say this is the serged edge, take your scissor and just cut a real thin, don't even cut into it. I mean, you're cutting literally just the top edges of the stitch right here off. So it's kind of like you're just kind of giving it what they call in a haircut, a dusting. You're giving it a small cut, and you'll get a little bit of fabric, so don't worry about that. But don't cut much off, and then you'll get in and find the one thread that you pull on it, and it'll just pull out that whole thread, and you'll be able to pull it apart. Then you can take your, let me grab this. You can take your lint roller and go over it and get all of the loose threads off really fast, because I'll sit and do this for get handfuls of it off real fast, and then I'll go back with my lint roller and get the rest of them, and it literally takes me no time. So it's just a matter of finding that one thread, and I can't even tell you which one it is. You just kind of have to keep picking at one until you find it, and then it'll just pull right out. So long as you've cut all the stitch heads off at the top, it'll come out pretty fast. All right, and then let's put the waistband on. And I always start at one seam and go to the other. I usually don't start in the middle because you gotta stretch it just a little bit. And that's where I'm stretching it. So I try to do it, start closer to a seam edge so that the straight run across the front and the straight run across the back, I can stretch those out and have a nice long seam. I'm coming up to my second seam on the other side. Now the bummy does go up just a little bit in the back, so make sure when you come around to the back that you are pulling that center part of that bummy back here down just a little bit so everything lines up nice. And then again, I get to the edge, I'm just gonna pull my tail out 90 degrees, pull on my fabric just a little bit more, and give it a tail to be able to lose that. So there is the waistband, and it's inside out right now. Yes, so my little guy's upside down. He's right, because when I look on the inside, he's right side up. So he's going the right direction. I put the legs on now. Fold in half again, clip. Just had a scare, it was like, oh no, did my video land? Sorry, that's what I was just checking. Sorry to freak you guys out. I always put the seam into the crotch area, and then I start, fold it in half, come to the other half with my finger, grab that, and that's where my other seam is at, and that's where I start sewing. So that I come around to where my clip is. All on the inside. Only thing, I don't like wearing sleeves when I sew long sleeves, because I'll do that. I'll catch my threads on them every now and then, and it makes me wonky. And if anybody is wondering, no, my serger is a Juki MO654D as in David, E as in Ellen. Love it. I've had it for 8 years. I have never had it in to be serviced because it's never needed it. I just oil it in 2 spots where it tells me to every now and then. This thing, it's a Juki. It sews and sews. And it goes through these, where the seams are together, like butter. I have absolutely no issues. I have no hiccups. It'll sew from a thin piece of fabric to a thick piece of fabric, all in the same sewing without any adjustments. You never even know it was switched from one fabric thickness to the other. It's pretty nice. Okay, now the leg bands, you may or may not get them correct inside out. These are so small. It's not going to show if you've got the print going the wrong direction, so don't worry about it so much. Try and do it right. But unless your print is really, really, really tiny and it really is very obvious that the direction is the wrong way, then pay attention. But other than that, just do your best. Don't rip it out if it's the wrong way. Nobody's going to know. And just the longest part is just getting everything lined up. When you're dealing with folding this in half, you've got 2 edges of the fabric already, and then you're trying to add the 3rd one. So again, in half, already clipped, seam to seam. Here's my half. Match it up to the outside side seam, which is the seam that's out here. Stuffed in there. Go back. And I always give it a good start, and then I come back around and straighten it out. But at least I've got it now. It's under the needles, and then it's kind of like having it that way. make sure that you've got the other side of your bummy away. You may sew it in one or two times until you kind of figure out, oh yeah, that did get in the way. So don't be hard on yourself. These are all little things you don't think about until you've done it. So do a couple practices. And if you don't have a baby these will fit, find a baby that you can just donate them to and say, I know they're not perfect, but wear them around the house, you know? I'm sure they'll be more than happy to have them. All right, so I know I still have tails to tuck in. Don't worry, I'm not going to do those to take the time and show you guys that that's just something we all do. So here's the bummies. And that's sublimated fabric, guys. I don't have to go buy but one bolt of fabric or one length of fabric, and I can have however many different prints that I want if I'm sublimating. So otherwise, you normally have to go buy a whole bunch of them to be able to do that. So, all right, now I'm going to move you guys over and we're going to hem the shirt. We're almost done. Okay, so now I'm over at my sewing machine and you guys have seen this little beauty many, many times. This is my Memory Craft 9500 and she is a sewing embroidery combo. She does 4x4 and 5x7. I've had her for 20 years. Love this machine. I know there are still a few out there you can buy. It has been out of production for a very long time. It's obviously there's been many upgrades. There's actually one that's like a 9700, I think, that looks almost the same. Probably same color and everything. It's just got a few more add-ons. Love this machine. So the stitch that I'm going to be doing is the stretch stitch, the stretch zigzag, and this is what it looks like on your machine. So it has like a stitch, a broken stitch on the zigzag all the way across. Your regular zigzag would be a straight line. This one's a dashed line. So that's the one you want to go to. I set mine at a width of 5.5, and then this one, the way the stitch, how far apart or how close together it is this number here. And it usually starts out at a 1, and then bigger, it gets wider apart, smaller, it gets closer together. I set this one at about a 0.8. I'm just kind of guessing. I usually do this on my brother, which is also a combo. And I'm more used to that one. The numbers there are the 1 to 5, numbers. So this one, it's correlates to 1 to 6. So that one I'm used to, but this one, I just can't get used to that one. And I've had this machine for how long did I say? And I'm still like, why is that a 0.8? So I don't know. But anyway, that's where I've set this. So what I do, again, you're probably going to want to clip this, and they also have a tape, and I used to do the tape for the longest time until I got used to this. So you can buy a tape, a hemming tape, and it's a sticky tape. It's not the iron-on. It's an actual sticky. It's like a double stick tape, and it's real skinny, and you can run one side along your edge here all the way around, and then you pull the protective paper off, and then you turn it to where you want it to go, and then you press it down and it'll hold it for you. That's what I did for the longest time until I got really used to how this feels and how everything goes, and now I don't do it at all. And I was even having to measure, and after you've done things so many times, you can start eyeballing a lot of it. So just be aware, I had to do that too. Everybody's had to do it until they get used to it. Keller Street, guys, let me tell you, PJ Mommy can hook you up. I'll leave a link in the in my notes below for it. So I don't mean to just tease you. I'm going to definitely make sure that you can go find her. Anyways, so I like to have a hem about that much on the bottom, and it's probably 1/2 inch-ish. And I got to duck under this camera. I realize I don't have my foot feed attached. When you run this as an embroidery machine, you don't have your foot feed attached. You have to detach it, and then I forget when I go to sew on it. So let me duck under. Sorry if you see my head. But we just attach it right there. And I also run my sewing thread. Just kind of move the camera just a little bit. I've got the gooseneck. Rather than running it here, it just makes my stitches come out so much nicer. I've started realizing over the years that that probably was one of my problems, and I didn't realize that that was probably the solution until I did it one time, and it solved so many of my sewing issues with my thread, because it would want to get stuck or get snarled a little bit or whatever. So now I don't have near the problems. All right, so always start by locking your stitch. So on this one, I've got an in-place lock, and of course it's gonna break on me right out of the gate. Hang on, guys. Okay, I'm back. I just had to rethread my machine just real quick. It never fails. Whenever you're trying to show somebody something, that's when everything comes completely unthreaded and you had it all perfect and ready to go. So just had to stop and do that. Now I have tucked my tail from when I sewed the side seams together. There was that little bit of a tail. I tucked it inside this hem here. So when you come along to that, make sure it's completely tucked under, and then when you do your stitches across, it'll catch it in, and then you never have to worry about it coming unthreaded. Also, making sure that my machine will stop with the needle down, in the down position anytime I stop, okay? So here we go. Get my next run completely laid out. Sorry if my arm is in the way. I always guide with my right hand in the back. That's just the way I've always been when I've sewn. And if I guide with my left hand, I can't do it. Even though I do tend to be somewhat ambidextrous, that part I cannot do. Now I'm flattening this seam down too, because it is wanting to roll like we've talked about several times. So, sorry guys, my arm is in the way. I'm just touching. So I'm just touching the edge of that. Check. It kind of felt like it was pulling a little harder than I thought. It's fine. I'm just not used to doing this on this machine. I use my brother upstairs. This is kind of my, I leave all of these to do at one time, and then if I'm really tired some evening, I'll sit down and just put a movie on and do these, and it's very soothing. It's mindless. I just sit and sew them all, and then the brother just guides everything in so nicely. This one just guides well on these stitches. I'm going to see. It's okay. It's just, oh, some machines do some things better than others, and that's all right. Coming around to the edge here. I want to catch I'm gonna cut this tail before I even get close. I've just learned, for me, it tends to not finish as nicely if I sew past it while that tail is uncut. It'll finish really nice because I always sew past that point so that I know that my start stitch is caught, and I know that's gonna lock that one into place. Just a little bit, and try and end about middle of that stitch so that it is catching it right on that surged area that I did at the bottom. And no, this one does not have the thread cutter. I am the thread cutter. All right. So there's the bottom hem. Now, if it's needing, you know, a little bit of a press at the end, you can do that. You know, you might look at that going, oh my gosh, I got to straighten that edge out. Then just go and, you know, real lightly with your iron, just give it a good press and it'll be okay. It'll roll it out fine. And that's this one. I know this is just because I was fighting the machine a little bit to do this stitch. So it kind of did that to me. The brother wouldn't have done that to me. So I'll have to give this a little bit of a press. And so then we'll do the same thing with the sleeves. And you see how I've got that little tail right there? I'm gonna tuck that in. That's gonna be right where I start. I'm gonna tuck that in. And I'll sometimes take even my scissor and kind of just give it an extra little swipe in there, kind of help it and get it started. And then lay it flat. And the sleeves take just a little bit longer because there's not as much fabric. And then I have to definitely pull on the back end. So this is where the hardest part was for me to learn to do without the tape. So if you never have to do the tape on the hem ever again, you still have to always do it on the sleeves, don't feel bad because it is tough to make that transition. I have sewn hundreds of these before I didn't have to do the tape on the sleeve anymore. And I still sometimes pull it, like right there, I pulled it too far, too much of my fabric forward so that I didn't have anything to grab in the back. I have to have this to grab in the back. And it keeps everything nice and flat for me. You see how many times I have to stop and I adjust, and that's just the process. And then I'm dealing with that rolling fabric. Almost there. Grab too much again. To the back. I'm just gonna probably have to try and do this with my left hand a little faster. Just trying to tell my brain, don't worry, you can be ambidextrous like this. Yeah, it's a little easier on this one because I can see exactly where I'm at. That bottom hem, I can't necessarily see as well. Okay, so I'm getting to where I want to cut that on both sides. I'll come back and trim it up better. I just don't want that long tail. And sometimes it creates like a little bird's nest under there. So I want that off of there. Okay. One more sleeve done. Now I've got my heat press still on, so I'll be able to press the bottom of this real fast to show you guys how it looks when it's completely done. Normally I don't have to do that, like I said, but I don't do it on this machine down here, so it fought me just a little bit. Again, there's my tail, tucking that under before I get started. But if you're taping it, it'll be real easy because you need to stick it to the tape. And you can make sure that it's caught real good. Get it started before I start going further. Yeah, this is just like the Bummies. I like to get started, and then I've got my third hand there helping me get everything straightened out because it's holding it down for me while I use my other hands to straighten it out. And the serging of that edge is what really helps you to be able to lay this nice. And you're able to do that. If you don't serge that edge, you're going to fight it because it's going to constantly want to move and roll and stretch on you, and it's not going to finish as nicely. So the thing about finishing your garments to make it look professional is it always takes the extra steps. Like this is an extra step here, and it's going to make it finish really nice and clean, and it's going to look very professional. I have so many people when they come into my booth that they look at it and then they realize it's a zigzag seam, and the ones that are sewers or seamstresses pick up on it right away, and they're like, oh my goodness, you sewed all these? And I said, yeah. And they're like, oh my goodness, you know, because they understand the process, but then they're also, you know, the zigzag is the giveaway, where the people that don't sew, you know, just your usual consumer, you're not going to notice those little details that it's a zigzag seam rather than like a cover stitch seam. But I actually kind of like it. I think it looks really nice. I can faux cover stitch with a double needle, and I tried that at first, and I really don't like it as much. I like how the zigzag finishes. I think it looks a lot better. Now, that's just my personal opinion. You may prefer the cover stitch look or the faux cover stitch look. That's fine. However you like to finish your garment. But I'm showing you how to do this in case you don't have a cover stitch and then you want to be able to finish your garment. And then I'm just going to cut that little tiny bit. That was that first one that I came around and I cut underneath. It was a little bit long. I didn't want to worry about cutting my fabric, so I just kind of cut it a little bit longer. Okay, so let's look at the finished set here. Okay guys, so I just gave the hem a quick press, and I want to show you what the final product turned out to look like. I'm really, really happy with this print. There you go. See how easy it is to make your own fabric with a matching shirt. Now, you don't have to make the shirt, guys. You can go buy a shirt and do the exact same thing. You just won't have to go through all the steps of making it. But I like my fabric to be the exact same as my Bummies. It's super, super soft. And I know that my customers at the market really, really love how soft it is. So anyways, if you guys give this a try, let me know. Let me know how it goes for you. And ignore my mess again. I'm sorry. It's really embarrassing. And I've had a little kitty out there looking in all the time going, what's going on in there, guys? Can I come in and join? She's so cute. So anyways, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.